Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tales, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now, let's get into today's tale. I was invited to my sister's baby shower and made a scrapbook of our childhood memories. She flipped through and snorted, "Oh, look," before she became the family embarrassment. Then my cousin jokes, "Careful, the pages might cry." Just as I got up to leave, my fiancé entered, holding a box and said, "You forgot this." What he pulled out made my sister collapse. "Are you sure you want to go?" Ethan asked me in the driveway, watching me tuck the scrapbook into the back seat. I smiled, or tried to. It's her first baby. I'm not going for her. I'm going because I have to believe there's still something in this family worth showing up for. He didn't argue. That's the thing about Ethan. He always knows when not to talk. But I could feel his doubt in the air between us. I grew up in Asheville, North Carolina, in a 2-story colonial house with a wraparound porch and blue shutters that were always in need of paint. The kind of house that looked picture perfect from the outside but never felt like home. Lila, my older sister by 2 years, was the sun in that house. She lit up every room and everything orbited around her. From the time she was little, she could do no wrong. Cheerleading captain, honor roll, prom queen. My parents practically polished her like silverware. They were proud to show off. I, on the other hand, was background noise. I wore black hoodies. In summer, started journaling at 11. Cried too easily, laughed at the wrong times. I was the phase my parents prayed I'd grow out of. When I didn't, they quietly gave up on me. Still, I clung to Lila. As little girls, we used to make blanket forts in the den and whisper secrets until we fell asleep. She once punched a boy for calling me ugly in 3rd grade, and I forgave her again and again, even after she started leaving me behind. Emotionally, socially, and eventually morally. The first real fracture came when I was 15. Cole, her boyfriend, the golden boy, captain of the basketball team, charming as hell and hiding a monster inside him. One night I came home and heard crying. Her door was cracked open and I saw her face swollen red with the imprint of a hand fading into her cheek. She begged me not to tell, and I didn't. I carried that silence for years. When I finally brought it up to our parents years later, when I was maybe 19 and couldn't bear the weight of it anymore, they brushed it off, said I was confused, said I must have misunderstood, that Cole came from a good family. Lila didn't correct them. That was the moment I realized she'd rather be believed than be saved, and I became the family liar. Fast forward to this spring. Lila's baby shower was the biggest family event in a decade. My mother had been sending me spreadsheets of the RSVP list, floral arrangements, and gluten-free dessert options since February. "Don't forget to bring a gift," her email read, "something meaningful. She's your sister." So I made a scrapbook, not a cheap gesture. I dug through old boxes for photos, scanned crumbling Polaroids, wrote hand-lettered captions, even included a few of the letters we wrote to each other as kids. It was raw and real, and it took me weeks. I put everything into it. I arrived on time, not early enough to help set up. They wouldn't have asked me anyway, but not late enough to be accused of being inconsiderate. The house looked exactly the same, but smaller. Lila wore a long white dress that draped perfectly over her belly. She was glowing, surrounded by friends with sleek hair and manicured nails who talked about prenatal yoga and organic baby lotion. I felt like a stranger in my own childhood home after the gifts were opened. Tiny onesies, diaper subscriptions, a handmade cradle from our uncle. I handed her the scrapbook. She opened it in front of everyone, flipping slowly, and then she laughed. "Oh, look," she said, holding it up before she became the family embarrassment. A few people chuckled, My cousin Naomi, always the instigator, added, "Careful, the pages might cry." I felt every eye in the room on me. No one stopped her. No one said a word. I smiled. The kind of smile you use to keep your face from crumbling. I stood up quietly and made my way to the front door. My throat was tight, my ears ringing. And then the door opened. Ethan walked in. I didn't know he was coming. He'd said he had a meeting in Charlotte, but there he was, calm as ever, carrying a box about the size of a shoebox. It had my name, written on top in his blocky handwriting. "You forgot this," he said, gently placing it on the table. Then he looked around the room. My mother stiffened. Lila's smirk faltered. He opened the box. Inside were documents, printed, labeled, organized, and photos, old ones. The first photo was of Lila, her eye darkened, a bruise blossoming under concealer. Another with a split lip, a letter in her handwriting, dated and signed. More photos. A journal page. Gasps rippled across the room. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Some of you might remember Cole," he said. "Some of you defended him. Some of you pretend nothing happened. But Maya," he nodded toward me, "carried this truth alone for years, to protect her sister, to protect this family." No one moved. Lila sat frozen, eyes locked on the photo in Ethan's hand. "I helped her gather this," he continued, "because you've all forgotten who Maya is. Or maybe you never bothered to learn. She's not embarrassed. She's the only one who ever told the truth." Lila's face went pale. She lowered her head, her hands shaking slightly. Then she stood up too quickly and stumbled back into her chair. She started crying quietly, then louder. But no one reached for her. I don't remember walking out. I just remember the wind on my face when I reached the driveway and the warmth of Ethan's hand finding mine. He didn't say, "I told you so." He didn't need to. I didn't go back inside. Later that night, I got a voicemail from Lila. Her voice sounded small, like the version of her I hadn't heard since we were kids. "I didn't know you still had those." "I'm sorry," she said. "I never wanted you to tell me, but I shouldn't have let you carry it. I'm sorry." I didn't delete it, but I haven't called her back either. My father emailed the next morning, said he was sorry too. Said he felt ashamed. He didn't ask for forgiveness. I didn't offer it. There's more I need to say, and maybe I will. But that baby shower marked the end of something I'd been trying to hold together for far too long. I know this isn't the typical relationship problem. It's not, he doesn't text back, or should I move in? But relationships aren't just about partners. Sometimes the most painful and confusing ones are with the people who share your blood and think that gives them a right to your silence. After we left the baby shower, Ethan and I didn't go straight home. We drove in silence for a while, letting the soft curve of the Blue Ridge Parkway wind around us. The sun was starting to dip behind the mountains, casting a warm, amber light across the dashboard. He reached over and rested his hand on my leg. As I stared out the window, I was trying to process what had just happened. Not just the outburst, not the reveal, but the years that had led to that exact moment. The layered weight of carrying other people's secrets, only for those same people to turn around and laugh in your face. I finally spoke. "Did you plan that?" Ethan kept his eyes on the road. "Not exactly. I brought it just in case." "In case of what?" "In case they did what they always do." There was no malice in his tone, no satisfaction, just an even calm. The kind that makes you feel safe and seen. Ethan has never been dramatic. If anything, he's the kind of person who thinks for too long before he speaks, which is why I knew the choice to bring that box wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate and protective. I exhaled slowly, the tension in my chest finally starting to loosen. "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded. It was time. The days that followed were oddly quiet. I didn't hear from my mom, not even a passive-aggressive text or a guilt-laced phone call. That silence, in some ways, was louder than if she'd yelled. My dad did try. His emails were tentative, filled with that uncomfortable blend of remorse and justification. He wrote things like, "I never realized how much you were holding. We failed you. That much is clear. I wish we could go back." But what do you say to someone who ignored the warning signs for so long? Who told you, as a teenager, that you were being dramatic when all you were doing was protecting your sister? I didn't respond. I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. I spent that week off work. I told my supervisor I needed a break, and she didn't ask questions. One of the rare benefits of working in a trauma recovery nonprofit. Everyone understands that healing doesn't follow a clock. Ethan stayed close. He cooked, cleaned, and watched terrible reality shows with me, even though he hated them. He never once brought up the scrapbook or the box unless I did. He just held space for me, which I didn't realize until then was something I had never really had in my life. 4 days after the shower, I got a letter, an actual letter in an envelope, with my name written in Lila's handwriting. I stared at it for hours before opening it. Inside were 5 pages, not typed, handwritten, and in a way that felt rushed, like the words were spilling out faster than she could keep up. She didn't start with an apology. She started with a memory. Remember when we made that secret sisters club? The one where we swore to protect each other no matter what. I think about that all the time, even now. She wrote about Cole. She admitted everything. That he started pushing her in 10th grade. That he'd grab her arms too hard and tell her no one else would ever love her. That she'd lied to our parents because she was afraid of what would happen if she told the truth, and more afraid they might not believe her. That she let me take the fall because she couldn't bear to lose the image they had of her. Then she wrote this. "I didn't think you'd still remember. I didn't think you kept those letters or the photos. I thought you'd moved on. But instead, you carried it. You protected me, even when I hurt you and I mocked you in front of everyone. I don't know what that makes me, but I know I'm sorry." There was more. She said she'd started therapy a few months into her pregnancy, mostly because her OB suggested it. She hadn't told anyone yet. She wrote that she's terrified of becoming our mother. The moment she saw Ethan pull out that box, it was like watching a mirror shatter in slow motion. She ended with a question. "I know I don't deserve your trust, but can I earn back even a piece of it?" I didn't know how to answer that. I still don't. Later that night, Ethan and I sat on the back porch with mugs of tea. The spring air was soft, carrying the smell of honeysuckle from the neighbor's fence. I read him parts of the letter. He listened quietly. Then he said, "What do you want to do?" It was a deceptively simple question. Not what I should do, not what would make things right, just what I wanted. I sipped my tea and stared into the dusk. "I think I want space," I said finally, "but maybe not forever." The thing about trauma, especially the slow burn kind that takes years to recognize, is that it doesn't always come with obvious wounds. It weaves into how you breathe, how you doubt yourself, how you look in the mirror, and wonder if you're broken because your own family made you feel small. I didn't grow up in a household with yelling or violence. I grew up in a house full of silence, of expectations, of unspoken rules about who mattered and who didn't. And even now, after the scrapbook, the box, the reveal, there's a part of me that still wants to go back, to make things right, to believe in the fantasy of the close-knit family that everyone else seems to have. But another part, the wiser, maybe healthier part, knows that peace doesn't always come from rebuilding. Sometimes it comes from stepping away and letting the past rest where it belongs. Still, I kept the letter. Not as a promise of reconciliation, but as proof that even people who hurt you can grow if they choose to, and that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as invisible as I once believed. A few weeks after Lila's letter, I got a text from Naomi, my cousin, who'd made the careful, the pages might cry joke at the baby shower. It said, "Hey, I feel awful about what happened. We were all being jerks. Hope you're okay." I didn't reply. There was something freeing about that, not retaliating, not explaining myself, just letting silence do the heavy lifting for once. Meanwhile, Lila gave birth. My mother sent out a mass email, complete with a Google Drive folder full of newborn photos. June Elizabeth, 6LB 10 Oz. The subject line read, "Our angel has arrived." She didn't call me, didn't even BCC me separately. She just assumed I'd care enough to click. I didn't. Not at first. But curiosity got the better of me a few days later, and I peeked into the album. There were at least 40 photos. Lila in the hospital bed, her husband crying, our dad holding the baby. Then there was one, just one, of my mom standing beside Lila, looking at the baby like she was made of gold. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I felt left out, but because I realized something. I didn't feel anything. Not envy. Not anger. Not longing. Just clarity. Now this is where things started to shift, in a way I hadn't expected. A friend of mine, Renee, a woman I'd met through the nonprofit I work for, called me a couple of weeks later. She runs a community center in Asheville that offers support groups for women navigating trauma, especially domestic abuse. She said, "We're trying to put together a fundraiser and awareness campaign for survivors, something rooted in real stories. Would you ever consider sharing yours?" At first I hesitated. The idea of standing in front of a room, telling strangers about what I'd seen, about what I'd carried, it felt invasive. But then I thought about that baby. Shower about that moment, when Ethan opened the box and no one spoke up for me. About all the people in my family who looked away for years. Maybe strangers would listen better. So I said yes. The event was held at a small community theater downtown. Nothing flashy. Folding. Chairs, coffee urns, and people in well-worn jeans. I stood under a soft spotlight and read from an essay I'd written. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. I talked about what it means to carry someone else's secret, what it does to a young girl when her pain is ignored, how hard it is to unlearn the belief that you are only valuable when you're quiet. When I finished, there was a pause, then applause. Long, sustained. Some people cried. Others just nodded, with that kind of heavy understanding that comes from having lived through similar silence. Afterward, Renee approached me. "You know," she said, "we've had a few donors ask about this. They want to expand it. Maybe a writing workshop for survivors, maybe a podcast." She smiled. "You could lead it." I felt something shift inside me then. Not the loud kind of pride, the steady, grounding kind. The next day, I updated my resume. The final turn came not long after. My mom called for the first time since the baby shower. No voicemail, just a call. I let it ring, thinking she'd leave a message. She didn't. But 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten. Not 5 pages like Lila's, just one. "I don't know who you are anymore," she wrote. "But I realize now I never really knew who you were to begin with. You were the strong one. I'm sorry it took me this long to see it. I hope it's not too late to start over." I sat with it for a while. I didn't cry. I didn't tear it up. I just folded it back and put it away. I never responded, because by then I'd realized something. I wish I'd known years ago. Closure isn't something other people give you. It's something you give yourself. Now for the part that might sound petty, but I promise it was earned. A few months later, the community center held a public exhibit as part of the awareness campaign we'd worked on. We called it Letters We Weren't Allowed to Send. Survivors submitted real unsent letters they'd written to their abusers, to family members, or even to themselves. Lila's letter was one of them. She gave permission anonymously. No one in the audience knew who had written it except for me and her. And my parents, who attended out of support. When they saw the letter, my mother went pale. My father put his arm around her and slowly led her away from the display. They never said a word about it. Later, I saw Lila lingering by the punch table, holding her daughter in a sling. We made eye contact. She nodded, and for the first time in years, I nodded back. Not in reconciliation, but in mutual understanding. I'm not the family embarrassment anymore. In fact, I'm not even part of the family in the way I used to be. I stopped chasing that version of connection, the kind that demands silence, conformity, and martyrdom. Instead, I built something new. Ethan and I bought a little house with creaky floors and a porch swing in Charlotte. I run writing groups, now. We host dinners where the only requirement is that you show up as yourself, fully and without apology. And every now and then, I pull out the scrapbook, the original one, the one I made with all the good memories before everything got twisted. I don't keep it out of sentimentality. I keep it as proof that I tried, that I showed up, that I loved, even when it wasn't returned, and that when the time came, I let the truth speak louder than my shame. My shame.